and welcome to day 2 of the ET Future of Education Mini Summit. The Future series includes future of jobs, work, and education. The series is our attempt to drive the dialogue on the transformation underway and needed in education systems, learning formats, and experiences to prepare for the future of jobs and to drive sustainable growth for businesses. The keynotes and panel discussions also attempt to showcase how organizations and individuals are adapting to new opportunities in learning and development and to constantly evolving demands and the definitions of work and the workplace. In this keynote fireside, I'm very happy to welcome Mayank Kumar, who is the co-founder and MD of upGrad and chair of India Edtech Consortium, to delve into why India's national digital universities could be its next UPI moment. Mayank, welcome to Economic Times.
Thanks. Thank you, Melanie, for having me here today.
All right. The launch of India's first digital university, known as NDU, or the National Digital University, is a one-of-its-kind initiative, and it was announced in this budget. The India EdTech Consortium has welcomed it, and it's called it India's next UPI moment. So, what is it about NDU that makes you believe that it could have the sort of impact that UPI has had?
No, sure. So, Melanie, I do believe that's a very, very strong move, just for 2-3 reasons. One, to give you a sense that in India, for every child in the age group of 4 to 18 who should be in school, roughly about 95-100% of them are in school. So they're going to school because of all the initiatives that the government has taken. But essentially, only 1 in 4 individuals end up going to any kind of higher education. So for the 2 of us who are speaking, there are about 6 other people of similar age group, similar background at that point of time who haven't accessed higher education so far. So, and for India to grow its gross enrollment ratio of 25% to go to 50%, which is a big, big delta move, we can't afford to open up so many institutions and so many universities. And therefore, NDU is a very, very strong initiative where India has to take the same leapfrogging that we did from landline phones to mobile, where we just shifted one generation completely. I think the same shift has to happen because the next generation of learners coming in may not necessarily afford to go to an offline or physical brick and mortar institution. And the part 1 that NDU definitely solves for is giving access to those who may not have access to education, and sort of ensure that India's GER ratio sort of improves. The second thing that NDU does very interestingly, Melanie, is that if you notice in India, from the background that all of us come from, after our 12th, we go for our undergrad education or postgrad education, so on and so forth. Many individuals today, after their 12th, they drop out because from the societal pressure perspective, they have to study. And if they have to start working and earn something for their families. If they are working and earning something for the families, they drop out of higher education completely. NDU gives them the opportunity of coming back into the education ecosystem after working for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, and still complete their graduation and undergraduation and be able to get a more respectable job in the ecosystem where they're coming from. The third thing, even those guys who get into education system, what happens is they come in and they drop out. Because after a year or 2, they realize that life has taken over. I am needed back in the family. My agricultural ecosystem is not supporting me. And therefore, I have to take a break. So NDU has come up with a very unique concept of ABC, Academic Bank of Credits. So whatever that you study at a university can be transferred to NDU, or whatever that you have studied in NDU can be transferred back to a separate university, such that the person can come in anytime, drop out, but not lose the work that they have done in that period. So in some, they have created a very unique infrastructure where all the credits are held together, people coming in, getting out, moving in, moving out, etc. So it's a very interesting model that has been created and conceptualized by the government, which will ensure that our participation in education, higher education goes up, our ability for people to complete their higher education increases, and we are able to increase capacity without going through the capex and infrastructure development. So instead of opening bank, we went via UPI. instead of working with multiple banks and multiple brick and mortar institutions, there was a one entity of UPI which was covered with everything. Similar to that is where NDU will come and play an important role. And the decentralization of everything is quite a unique play that the government has come out with. Sorry for the long answer, but that's just, it's an interesting topic, and there's a lot of potential sort of optionality coming out of this NDU ecosystem that the government is working on.
No, Mayank, thank you for that answer. And also, I think, there are a lot of points that you made, which we'll sort of get into individually. But it really took a pandemic to spur, UPI, or for, it to become so sort of widespread, or, to catch people's imaginations, and also use and, sort of get into day-to-day use. What will it take for us to be able to spur the adoption of NDU?
So I sometimes take look, I think what happened was a demonetization leading to a UPI growth, and pandemic sort of further fostered it. But when I look at the NDU growth, I believe that sometimes you have to ask the question, do we have a choice? If we do not have a choice, then this is the way out. If India cannot afford to produce more and more graduates who are highly skilled and ready to be joining the workforce, by setting up brick and mortar institution, we do not have a choice but to go to online. If individuals do not have a choice of leaving their job, let's say I become a truck driver and I need to run and drive my truck throughout, but I still want to get my BCom. I do not have a choice but to look at NDU to sort of come into the ecosystem. So India, just to give you context, this is, if you ask somebody, and most of the places when you go out, Melanie, you will ask, what have you done? Where did you study from? Where did your parents study from? And if you ask about the grandparents, a lot of individuals that you will meet, grandparents may not have gone to higher education also. So this is the first time many individuals in these generations are coming to higher education as the first generation higher education learner. And for them, online is the only choice out. And that's why I sometimes do not expect the stars to align. I sometimes just ask the question, do we have a choice? If we do not have a choice, then this is it. But pandemic has definitely helped. And going forward with the way future of work is emerging, where people will be working as gig economy and working on one job at one point of time, shifting jobs on an ongoing basis, an online university, a digital university will play a very critical role in solving for the talent demand that the Indian economy requires, and NDU will play an important role in that.
All right. But there's one thing about digital learning, right? Like, you have to be self-motivated. You also have to be able to come to the class. It's an online class, so you should be able to, sort of discipline yourself. With an NDU, when of course, it's granting people the flexibility. There's also fungibility. Like, you can use, your tokens or your degrees, the credits that you get into from a university system, that can be used in an NDU. Something that you get out of an NDU can be used into a university system. So that sort of freedom is there. But, again, playing the devil's advocate, the kind of discipline that is required, again, in terms of infrastructure, for instance, we will need the connectivity to be there. How do you see all of that happening?
So I think a very good question, because I think we should always look at why it will not work. And then, yes, if you do not have a choice, it has to work. But there are hindrances that you rightly mentioned, whether it is of infra or human motivation. So let me cover the human motivation aspect first, Melanie. You're right that education is not like Netflix. You can go home and binge watch a new episode coming out on any of the platforms, but you cannot binge watch economics 101. You cannot binge watch sociology 101. You cannot binge watch mathematics or physics 101, because education requires a heavy load. I mean, you don't hear somebody coming in, कल यार मैं रात को 4 बजे बैठा 10 बजे बैठा था, सुबह 8 बजे तक I was just doing computer science and coding 101 or Python 101. These things are very difficult to happen, because when you're learning, it requires a little bit of cognitive overload. And therefore, an interesting part of NDU is the concept of mentor and local hub and spoke methodology, where government is encouraging various institutions and universities to provide localized mentors. See, education is like eating vegetable. Till you slap somebody to eat your vegetable, nobody wants to eat it on their own. So you require somebody to slap somebody And that's where the mentors come and play a very important role. If you think of your own sort of journey, many a times all of us take up a gym membership. We take up in the month of January as a New Year resolution, and by the time we reach February and March, we slowly start slipping out. Because at that point of time, what takes us through the full year of journey of a gym is a good coach, a good gym instructor who will push you hard and say, Miloni, come on, let's do it one more time. And you can push yourself. I think that concept of distributed network of mentors and coaches will play a very, very important part in bringing that motivation level and ensuring that the person is getting pushed in the right direction. And I also believe that the outcome at the end of completion of the program will also keep the individual continuing. But the good part is, even if the motivation drops, for example, for whatever reason, I just decided that, look, now it's been 6 months, one semester, I just want to take a break. Go ahead and take a break, because you can come back again. So I think in that context, with the local mentor and the ability and the flexibility that the institution provide, I do believe that this has to sort of, people have to come together and form the right connect and break away any kind of anonymity in the system. Because, for example, I mean, if nobody has seen you getting in the institution, it's very easy for you to get out. And therefore, in online, it's very easy for you to get in because nobody knows. But in an offline institution, if you get in, your chachaji, your taoji, your taiji, everybody knows that you have gotten into a university. So it's very difficult for you to drop out. But if you take out anonymity in the online context, it will be very difficult for the person to take out and get out of the system. So I think that those elements are built into the NDU eco infra, and I believe that that's going to help in completion and ensuring completion happens at a large level. On your other question on infra and accessibility and network, yes, there are challenges, but I do believe that the pace at which the infra is growing of digital infra and whether it's 4G coming to 5G and getting to the last mile connectivity, I think India is miles ahead of anything. If you ask me today, when I go outside India, I really feel trouble because I'm not able to use the digital payment infrastructure, which is so well developed in India, in any other country outside India. And I expect that the infra development will definitely overcome the challenges of delivery of high quality education, because even today, I mean, I access an IPL or a World Cup cricket across different platforms, even at a low megabyte or low sort of network domain. So I do believe that that should not be a question area, because that will surpass, and then the systems, there's a long way to go. Infra is here, online education is here. So even if the online education comes to this level, infra will continue to increase and improve over a period of time.
All right. Mayank, that's good to know. In the sense, yes, of course, we have 5G coming in. There's this entire policy of BharatNet. So yes, that is going to sort of get spurred. Access hopefully should not be so much of a challenge, and we'll sort that out, as you say. But there's another question that comes to my mind. Like right now, I think the National Education Policy of 2020 outlined a goal of achieving 50% gross enrollment ratio, GR, something that you mentioned, by 2030. So first of all, I want to understand if that is the right metric for us to be able to see whether, we've managed to get education and higher education across the wide swath of India's population. That's number one. The reason I ask is because, very often we have the educated, uneducated, in the sense that people who, even right now, we've got a lot of data that says that, there are kids who are in 5th grade, 8th grade, but their math skills are still only on par with kids who are in grade 3 and grade 5. And I think that continues kind of through as you go, even in higher education system. So this entire having this metric of the gross enrollment ratio, what do you think about that?
Sure.
And also, will this really mean that we'll be able to get the quality education and solve the problem when it comes to not employment but employability?
Correct. No, I think it's a very good question, because it's always, sometimes it could lead to influx or sort of flooding up of the market with too many underemployed graduates or people coming in, but they do not have enough jobs or skills to be relevant in the ecosystem. But here's my take, Miloni. If you plot any country's GDP per capita adjusted for PPP, which is the purchasing parity, the one metric that defines the growth of GDP per capita over a period of time is every country's gross enrollment ratio. If India has to aim to becoming a 5 trillion, $10 trillion economy, there is no other way of not, I mean, there's no way that we can reach to that level without having a 50%, 60% gross enrollment ratio. So if today we are sitting with about 20 million, 30 million higher education enrollment learner, and look, when I'm saying 50%, what does that mean? 1 in 2 individual is going through higher education. The second individual is not even going through higher education. And that's just in higher education ecosystem. I'm not even talking about further education or postgraduate education. And that basic level of education is required for the country to continue its growth trajectory. And I mean, if I look at China, which is currently already at 50, 60% plus, US is at about 80% plus, Korea is about 90% plus. If we have to be in the developed economy category, we do need individuals to be ready, skilled, and went through higher education. Now, look, higher education is not having degree, and higher education is also about having the right kind of skills that is needed for one to sort of do well in the program. And therefore, the kind of, if you read NEP also, the way they are rethinking about school education, the way they're rethinking about moving away from rote learning to more application-based learning, the way they're rethinking about the skill-based education and how do you include skills and be able to drive the growth and provide the individual with the right level of skills. So I think the higher education of tomorrow is going to be a right mix of academic inputs that are coming in as part of the education infra, along with the skill inputs. And you will start seeing the merging of education and skilling via that route. And you will see graduates coming out which are more skilled. Having said that, I can also tell you that once you move to that scale level, there is obviously going to be question marks on quality, because we are not as a country ready to solve all at one go. But is the step moving towards 50% gross enrollment ratio or 60% gross enrollment right one? Absolutely yes. Will we face challenges in terms of quality? Absolutely yes. As long as we are aware of these issues, we have to work towards solving for that rather than running away saying that, look, we can't solve for it and therefore might as well not aim for a high gross enrollment ratio.
All right. But, then what sort of a model do you see emerging, Mayank? So in the sense that, we'll have the NDUs, we'll have regular brick and mortar schools, colleges functioning, we'll have, platforms such as yours, who continue to impart. I mean, there will also be the apprenticeship model, the skilling, which will go on. So what is the kind of model that you're seeing actually emerge? Will everything sort of work together, synchronize with each other?
No, I think you will see the beauty of NDU and NEP is that it's sort of like a how do I say, it's sort of like a bank. You can come in, you can get out at any point of time, and therefore I think there is going to be a coming together of the ecosystem. I think partly that universities will work with a lot of technology providers or edtech companies. Edtech companies will support universities to sort of move up and launch some of the new programs and build capabilities. We'll also see universities accepting an edtech program as part of the credit system. We'll also see edtech companies accepting university credentials to sort of build and scale this up. So I think it's an ecosystem of coming together. You will have universities, you will have some skill providers, you will have edtech companies coming in, you will have platforms and infrastructure companies coming in to build this ecosystem out. So I see this as the same way as when the road infrastructure was getting developed, the ecosystem had to come together. Even when the case of digital infrastructure for education is getting created, the ecosystem will come together, and we will leverage each other's leverage each other's strengths and ensure that the other weaknesses are getting covered. And that's how I personally believe the ecosystem will evolve. I don't think it's a one-trick pony will win everything. The more we collaborate, the more we come together, the more we sort of cross-subsidize each other's weaknesses and leverage on each other's strengths is when we see the magic happening in this space.
All right. So basically, you're saying, the future is one of collaboration. upGrad is a pioneer in the online education revolution. How do you see NDU coexisting with the edtechs? Do you see direct competition, or Will there be a place where NDU can plug into edtechs like upGrad?
No, I think as you're building the ecosystem, you rightly said one big problem is even the acceptability of online education, right? I mean, while we know that there is no other option, but people will have question marks. Look, is this the right thing for me to do? Can I learn online? Will the infrastructure be good? If I'm coming learning online, is this degree or credential even valued? And will corporates look at it? So I think there is going to be investment going in the ecosystem to build the credibility and build the acceptability of online education. And that's where public and private partnership could play a very important role in creating the acceptability. At the same time, I do believe that institutions and universities today have a very strong capability of running it offline. And when they're looking at going online, they will like to partner and they will look for partnership with various operators and various providers to ensure that we are bringing in the capabilities that EdTech have to support an existing universities to go online. So I think that you will see a collaboration happening where university and EdTech companies will come together where EdTech company can provide the platform, can support in content development, can facilitate what quote unquote government calls as technology service provider, and ensure that the universities are able to take their existing programs online and at scale. The third thing that we'll see, Miloni, is that a lot of edtech companies are focusing a lot on skills and ensuring that the learners are finding the right skills. But the skills will start getting certain amount of credits while you're learning, and those credits can be leveraged later for any individual to build and sort of go back into a degree program and get an additional degree. So I think those elements of collaboration is going to come in. These are early days and early start, and very soon we'll see some interesting model emerging out of this.
This is my last question to you, Mayank. How do you see NDU transform the learning landscape and the kind of changes that we could see perhaps in the skilling landscape as India reaps the benefit of the demographic dividend, while we contend with the changes brought on by tech on jobs and employability?
I think the first generation learner, the outcome is very clear because NDU provides them access at the right cost, at the right affordability, at the right sort of access level. But here are two statistics that I'll share with you, Miloni. One is, if you look at historically, about a generation or two generations or three generations back, the trade or the job of the family used to pass from one generation to another generation. If the farmer was if the father is a farmer, the son would be a farmer. If the father is in smithing, the son would be in smithing, etc. So the generation to generation job used to get transition, and your surname used to define the job that you are in. In the last generation, the shift happened. Agriculture society moved to service-led society. In today's generation, I can guarantee you that an individual will go through 6 to 7 shifts in their careers. And if they are doing so, gone are the days when you have one job for one life and you will have multiple jobs over a period of time. Second statistic that I do always when people come and join upGrad is I ask them one question that, look, what is the ratio of the number of years of experience you have divided by number of jobs? The answer I get is a low of 2 or 3 to a high of 8 or 9, that they are in a job for 7, 8, 9 years or so. The median is 5 or 6 years. I ask the same question for the parents. The answer is 35:1 or 40:1. So in today's context, and people will shift job, you are bound to upgrade your skill on an ongoing and a consistent basis. You cannot rely on one and done philosophy. Education has to be like a polio shot that you have to, not a polio shot, but a regular sort of shot that you have to keep on going every 2 to 3 years to stay relevant. I do expect a place where things will become like a skill passport, and your passport will expire. And you will have to sort of go back to the government and say, okay, now stamp me another passport saying I'm ready to travel again. I think in that context, NDUs, the reason why I say NDU is the next UPI is because NDU's philosophy and the way it's built is to solve for lifelong learning. And in the lifelong learning context, an individual will keep on coming back to university every 3, 5, 7 years. Unfortunately, in today's context, we cannot leave our job and join a university back. And therefore, the only option for us is go back to a digital university and an online university, learn there, get ourselves skilled, go back, refresh ourselves, find the next job, work there for 5 to 7 years, skills will get redundant, go back again and get reskilled in the process. So the future is going to be very different than what we are used to. And that means that individuals will have to start learning how to invest in ourselves. If you ask any individual, any professional today, how much do you spend on your own learning? The answer may likely to be zero. But if you ask them how much have you spent for your kids' learning, there's a larger number. And the context is that I personally believe in the future, while you're doing your annual budgeting, annual planning, you will put a line item for travel, you will put a line item for health, you will put a line item for vacationing, etc. While you do not put a line item for learning, a line item for learning will come in, and that line item for learning will be dependent on how strong the NDU infrastructure is going to be in the future.
A line item for learning on every household list for the year, spurred by the transformation in jobs and the need for skills in the future of work. Thanks very much, Mayank, for sharing your thoughts on NDU and why it's the UPI moment for India.
Perfect. Thank you, Miloni. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to this session on harnessing the power of tech to reimagine learning experiences and revolutionize education here at the ET Future of Education Mini Virtual Summit. I'm Miloni Bhatt and my guest today is Nidhi Bhasin. She's the CEO of Nasscom Foundation. Nidhi, welcome to Economic Times.
Hi, Miloni. I'm such a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful to have you here with us, Nidhi. Tell us a little bit about Nasscom Foundation and the core philosophy of tech for good, and the key areas of intervention, which is digital literacy, skilling, employability, and women entrepreneurship. Especially now that we have this new education policy coming, and it'll impact all of these things. So, how do you see them actually impacting the larger ecosystem and your role evolving?
Sure, Miloni. So Nasscom Foundation is a part of Nasscom ecosystem. So we were established, we just celebrated our 20 years, and we have done some impactful work across the country. But our core agenda, goal is tech for good, any technology which has social impact. Because especially in today's time, we all understand that the role of technology into maybe speeding up the overall social impact narrative. So that's where we completely believe that it is technology which will help the country also to achieve the SDGs. And with that as a focus and understanding the need both of the community and since we represent NASSCOM of the tech industry. Where is the alignment? And within the tech for good, while we work on social innovation, our focus is a lot on digital literacy, especially at the last mile, because we feel that yes, with technology, the urban-rural gap is also increasing, and we need to ensure that no one is left behind. The development of the country has to be very inclusive. So for that reason, the people at the last mile have to be digitally literate. So we're running a lot of programs, especially also with a lot of focus on aspirational districts. Secondly, the other key vertical that we have or the goal that we have is around scaling and employability. We have the largest youth population in the world and also the largest unskilled, unemployed youth population. So there is how do we bridge this gap? How do we ensure that the youth is upskilled and also employed? So with that, we run a lot of programs across the country on skilling programs which gives you jobs in IT enabled skills. So which could be in the tech industry or any other industry. And we do run programs from traditional technology to Java, C++ to emerging technology like cybersecurity, AI. And our whole segment is all approaches to reach the marginalized youth. And the third key area is, women is a major part of this inclusion for all. So we do run a lot of programs around digital upskilling of women entrepreneurs. So this is across board, especially we work with hundreds of colleges and universities in our skilling programs, in our digital literacy programs across 24 states across the country. And of course, you mentioned the national education policy. Now, that is the key. One of the key focuses out there is to ensure that we are talking about that more and more people at the senior level, at the higher education level, are a part of the education system. But we also understand that there's a huge gap out there. So right, while the gross enrollment rate I was going through a study is almost 100% at the primary level. But as we go towards the secondary levels and the higher education, it's dropping majorly. So to bridge that gap, again, what we have seen is how technology has plays a role, and we saw that during the pandemic. So a combination of what the government wants to do, aligned with what technology can really help, and of course, along with all the infrastructure. So there is definitely a scope to really align these two things, and a whole initiative of Tech for Good is focused on ensuring that we bridge these gaps.
So, Nidhi, how do you see your role, when you have the new education policy, when you have the NDU? How do you see the scope of that enlarge or change?
One I would say is, see, any kind of change starts with at least the intention, right? So what I feel that by having both the National Education Policy and ND, the intention is there. Now we need to come together to capitalize on that and ensure the
Hmm.
right kind of resources are available for that. So as Nasscom Foundation and Agenda of Tech for Good, we work with some of the major tech industry companies. We are trying to see that how through the CSR part of it, how these companies are looking into investing into CSR, whether you see it from a tech for good point of view, or social innovation point of view, or education point of view. We're trying to see that how we can bring these resources together to actually ensure that we are able to align ourselves with the NEP and make sure that there's more access to education. And of course, a gap is also about the accessibility in terms of either the infrastructure or digital accessibility. So
Hmm.
that is one way, that having more resources to support this whole agenda. And NT definitely, I think again, what I said earlier, last 3 years showed us that, if you have online learning system, we can reach the last mile. Of course, pandemic did show us that a lot of people at the last mile were also left behind because of the accessibility issue. But along with that, if we acknowledge it and we start addressing it and we start supporting it, we are able to, one, reach out to a lot of rural youth. We are able to reach out to a lot of the educators in the rural areas, and we're also able to give them a lot of courses which is more of interest to them, right?
Hmm.
And we would be able to align a lot of courses which are more in terms of which will make them employable at the rural area itself, right? Because a lot of in our education system, a lot of curriculum may not be giving make scaling them from a employability point of view, right? They may be educating them but may not be making them employable. The courses available, I'm hoping the courses available at ND will actually help them to uh, make them more employable, whether it is about after class 12 or it is at the stage of graduation. But at all levels, it will make them more employable. They'll give them more skills, more options. And also, it is also within the marginalized, there is also a section which is in terms of children with learning disabilities, right?
Okay.
So even ND would be able to help you to cater to some of those segments, because it probably, because it will have a lot of options out there. It will cater to the people with learning disability, at least in terms of people can learn at their own pace, because in a classroom setting everybody may not be able to learn at the pace that the teacher sets, right, or the school sets. Here there could be a lot of learning. People who have attention issues
Hmm.
can learn probably in short breaks. Similarly, people who do not have an interest in a certain subject can actually drop and say that I want to do a certain kind of a curriculum or a course. So put together, I think these two, provided there is enough infrastructure, provided there are enough resources, provided the accessibility issue, which is a huge issue, is
Hmm.
bridged. Without this, they will all fail. Addressing these three issues, and of course, having the right kind of awareness in the areas to say that how this will help. I think a combination of all of this will really help to, um, if not completely reach the goal that we have set ourselves to achieve as a country, but at least we'll be close to it.
Right. You know, how do you see teachers, especially, and their role in all of it? Right now, one of the big problems that we have with our system is the quality of teachers and training. And in the NEP, of course, there is a very focused way in which, we want to up the quality of teachers. What are some of the challenges that you see in us through even through the NEP or even with the NEP in being able to bridge that gap and make quality teachers available to others?
So, we saw the gap when the gap was not only for students but also for majorly for teachers. It was much bigger for teachers when the pandemic set and everybody had to go into the online virtual learning system. And I think I've seen a lot of government resources, or let's say NCRT or CBSE right now, putting a lot of concentration on teacher skilling, right? Because while we do talk about right kind of education for children, it will not come unless the teachers are skilled. So one, there is of course a number gap out there. If I'm not mistaken, we have I think we need to right now double the number of teachers if we want to reach the ratio of 1:15 that the government is talking about. So one, in terms of having more teachers available to teach, right? Second is skilling them and upskilling them. Um, Also have more incentives, better pay scales, because one of the reasons that you don't get the right kind of teachers is also because while it is a very honorable profession, right, but it's not really paid as per what the market scenario right now is. Only very few private schools pay you well, right? And so one is from actually acknowledging that if this is actually the segment who's going to train the future of the country, right? Then how can we say that they have to be below average resources? Then they have to be the best resources. So one, I think a little bit more concentration of better quality by giving them more facilities, incentives, salaries. Secondly, also in terms of skilling and upskilling, even in the corporate life, we say that it is important to upskill every resource, right? So skilling for teachers again become extremely important. And I would say that while the government is talking about under CBSE, NCRT, all the other curriculums, it is also important that we also, as a non-profit sector, I would talk about the whole of it, concentrate on it. While a lot of CSR spend is happening on upskilling or skilling the students, what about spending a little bit more money on skilling the teachers? So that definitely, I think I would say that to ensure that the future is absolutely as per what we want them to be in terms of their strengths, in terms of their capacity. It has to, right now, this is the time to concentrate on teacher skilling and upskilling, and I think better incentives and resources for them.
All right. Nidhi, now this is my final question to you. You worked in the social sector, you're also CEO Nasscom Foundation, and you all build linkages. So from your vantage, what is the type of cooperation, partnerships, and what is the tech layer that you think will be needed between those in the education sector, employers, the larger community, just so we ensure inclusive, sustainable societies where there is some sort of economic and social equity?
I think everybody right now is talking about collaboration, right? I think wherever I go, we hear the word collaboration, right? But collaboration also comes with a lot of personal responsibility. And so whether it's a government, it's a non-profit sector, the civil society, or the private sector, edtech companies, corporate CSR, whatever it is, it's very important for all of us to actually have a set goal together. So there is a goal, but how are all of us committing to that goal? How are we, like at Nasscom Foundation, I'll tell you, we've taken a goal of saying by 2025, we would have impacted 100 million lives. Out of these 100 million lives, we are talking about at least 25% to 30% being the youth, in terms of skilling, upskilling, making them employable. So that is the kind of commitment we are making. Can we do it ourselves? No, we can't do it ourselves, right? So we are trying to work along with the government to understand how we can partner with them. We're probably having conversations, let's say with CBSE and NCRT, to see that, okay, what is it that we can do in terms of skilling, upskilling the teachers? Similarly, we're speaking to the private sector to figure out in terms of, okay, is there any kind of a CSR spend or any other spend that they're ready to do on, and what is it that we can work on together? What is the also in terms of, if we talk about innovation, we are also encouraging at the college and university level more and more students to come up with innovative ideas about whether it is like setting up a pre-startup or any ideas which will help you in terms of better reach, more efficient, educational systems. And third is that I think edtech companies came up suddenly overnight, hundreds and millions of them. I think it's time for us to also say how they are being responsible for it, right? What is it? And also, somewhere there's a lot of content available. There's a lot of syllabus content, all of that available. How can we put it all together to ensure that it reaches where it's supposed to reach? And I think one bigger thing is that when we are developing this content, while whoever is doing it from a profit point of view, fine, they're doing it for a certain segment. But if we really, where our largest population is in the rural areas or the last mile, are we trying to even understand what is the need out here? What kind of a content do they need, right? And are we making this content adaptable to those needs? Because if the content that my child will use in the school, if I take it to a rural area, it's not the right kind of content. So the whole advantage of this virtual learning, hybrid learning, online learning, edtech is that you can tailor make content to suit the need of a community, right? And there needs to be a little bit more concentration. We have some great solutions happening right now. In fact, we do these Tech for Good awards, and we had an organization like Pratham who has a great solution, and they were one of the winners out here. So there are some great solutions. It's just that the scale of the country is such that we need to have more solutions. And in terms of technology, right now can be the biggest enabler. But my underlying thing again and again is that, do we have enough access to it? When I say we, I mean people at the last mile. I'm not talking about a typical urban population. I'm not even talking about the population which would have at least one phone in the house. I'm talking about a community which doesn't know what a smartphone is. I'm talking about a community where probably 8 or 9 people will be using one particular instrument. So if we are talking about online, if you're talking about technology, then it has to come first with the right infrastructure. It needs to come with the right kind of accessibility.
Right. Nidhi, very good points. And, I want to ask one more question,
Yeah.
and that is, uh, you sit as the CEO of Nasscom Foundation, and obviously you see tech in play, right? And how that tech is transforming lives and all of that. And you pointed out that there is a deep tech divide, especially with a stratified society such as ours. And tech at the last mile, what's the accessibility? You raised the question. How confident are you that, or from your vantage, how much time do you see us in getting that tech to that last mile? What are the big challenges for us, and what's the roadmap that if you could share?
Had If we had the right resources, we would be actually achieving our SDGs by 2030, and one of them is education, of course, right? But right now, there's a huge gap between the resources that we need and what are being we what is available right now. So I feel, ideally, I would say yes, 2030, but it is all subject to the resources. As an organization, that's why I said we took a goal of 100 million lives, impacting 100 million lives. But um, it's got a ripple effect. So if we don't achieve it by 2030, we are going that much behind what we really need to do. So I would just say that at this point of time, we are in 2023, we have 7 years to go with a huge gap. Uh, Provided if we are able to put more resources to it, it's all about resources. If we are able to put more resources to it, whichever sector it is from, whether it's from government, it's from private, it's from civil society, if you're able to put more resources to it, yes, we can achieve it by 2030. Otherwise, the gap will continue at the rate that the population is growing. Yes.
Right. These are sober words, Nidhi, to end on, and really, for everyone to ponder. And as you said, everyone needs to come together. So be it civil society, be it corporates, be it government, be it organizations, all come together, do their bit, and help others in doing their bit as well. But Nidhi, thank you so very much for speaking with us today and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, Maloney. It was lovely. Thank you so much.